Hello and welcome to another jungle video, a Worlds 2020 special. In this one, we are going to have a look at how you can watch, study, mimic, learn from, and become like the best junglers on the world stage. To show you the different facets of their games that sort of give them that big brain effect, sort of like a goal for your own neurons, I want to highlight as the main feature of this video, Canyon's absolute domination of Inspired and Rogue through his genius level tracking, pathing, and extended sequencing. And don't worry, I will explain what that is. I'll then show a different approach with some more kill-hungry results from Pyosik, as well as a short summary about Selfmade and SofM's playstyle that has allowed them great success and essentially allowed all these junglers to deconstruct their enemies into nothing but another jungle camp. So if you want more Worlds content, let me know in the comments. Please also consider liking and subscribing if you do enjoy the content. And now without further hesitation, let's begin. And the great thing about all the principles I will outline in this film is that you can use them all in solo queue to great advantage of your LP and perhaps even your self-confidence. Now at Worlds, level 1 setups have proven to have drastic effects on vertical jungling as well as early lane pressure, specifically in those side lanes. Obviously, most of you know from my videos I hate level 1 invades in solo queue most of the time, because in higher elo these can have drastic effects on the outcome of the game, and you don't have the team synergy, the draft kingdom, the reliable impact on the top lane in order to, navigate the lane matchups. As such, every bit of information at level 1 needs to be considered very carefully. In this case, Gangplank goes back perfectly, timing his 1-minute recall so he can slap the trinket down at the last second. This is very common, junglers in solo queue do this as well, and it's also very common for a Graves to go from red into blue, which is sure something the Graves players sort of go to sleep dreaming about because it's what they all do. The curious thing about this is that Inspired the Hecarim did not leave any trinket vision, nor does he go back to base to get an early scanner watching those entrances, but that means you get literally zero value out of the first few minutes of that trinket. Otherwise, all in all, a simple layout level 1 just defending the entrances. You will have noted that Damwon's bot lane did ward and try a cheeky tri-bush invade, but Kalista noticed due to the ash particles coming through the bush. However, that ward will be very important. What this does for Canyon though is that it lets him know when bot lane is late to lane and walking to try that Hecarim started red. Pretty obvious. It's also why leashless junglers are really having a good time at the moment, because it doesn't give any information about where they started, unless of course you have a good level 1 invade, and makes these sort of red buff invades into blue like the Graves is doing now a little bit more risky. Now classically, Hecarim likes to do those inner clears, 4 cams. In the pro stage you can do whatever you want, and thanks to the ward doing a heroic job on the river there, the Hecarim can see the Graves is going into the blue. The problem is it looked like Inspired was going from red to blue into a Grom and then basically a reverse clear down. This is great if Graves is going to red, Raptors, and then invade. This is great if you simply want to path opposite to the enemy jungler or happen to actually meet them on the bottom side despite starting on the red buff for both junglers. This moment is what sets the tone for the game, the misread from the Hecarim and then the excellent pathing by Canyon. So rather than doing the Raptors and buying a bit of time, seeing the Graves and then being able to flex into a vertical jungling route, if you're going for the buff Gromp sequence down, you must pay attention and have laners that are able to assist and rotate. This is easier in solo queue where you can sort of play for the game and not the lane. Alternatively, the Hecarim would have had to start on the blue buff anticipating this invade, and you can go leashless and then basically have the Graves waste his time. The problem is that Lulu is shoving the GP level 1, he won't be able to help. Showmaker is Showmaker, meaning that Hecarim will be forced to go to the wolves directly, forgo the blue, and then sequence down. If Hecarim simply went into the Raptors after red, sees the Graves into a blue invade with a Gromp, he would not have been seen, and also, if you have the scanner, you can kind of check if there's any vision while you're on your way. The nice thing about that is you would have prior on ganking on the pushing bottom side, but you do inherently risk perhaps having them collapse on you on the blue if it is warded, and so you will need communication and different strategies to sort of prepare for this. Showmaker understands that as Hecarim has not been seen on the ward placed by Canyon outside Rogue's blue, that it's likely Inspired will be on the bottom side and looking to have some sort of lane impact or perhaps even head into Canyon's blue. Now what this means is that the Hecarim is severely constrained to his red quadrant, has missed a window between trinket wards to be able to vertical jungle, and therefore the Canyon gap begins. Canyon had checked to see if the wolves are down. This would give him a lot of information about Hecarim's pathing. They were simply trampled under hoof, and then follows that up with a dive and first blood on the top lane. Now all the setup is done, Canyon has everything he needs to ensure he can be level 8 while Hecarim is level 6. And I'm sure as most of you are astute individuals, that is in fact a 2-level lead. And all of this is because of a bad level 1 and horrible lane jungle synergy reaction by Inspired, who was, by the way, spotted on the bot side vision from Damwon Gaming. This means that Canyon, instead of, going back to base and playing passively, instead of doing the top crab, simply goes straight from the dive top all the way to the bottom crab, He has lane prior and strong lanes. That means that Hecarim is forced to back away. He can protect his own jungle, and this is where things get, again, big brain. Classically in solo queue, you'd fall back to your blue side as Graves, clear that up, maybe sequence up again, or head back to base. Hecarim would then have prior on the top crab, and then most likely go and steal your red camps as payback for your dirty tricks. Except Canyon, you know, like a lot of you might say no to death, he says no to going back and no to being counter jungled. He knows his topside camps are level 1, but he wants to control the timers, and he wants to prevent the demon pony from having any sort of scaling. Remember, you keep camps away from the Hecarim, he doesn't have the same gank ability, and you can make sure his experience deficit is kept at bay and his gold income is stifled such that Triforce will only be completed by the time the items change. So what happens is, while the mid laners want to reset, Gangplank has prior on the top side, and so obviously Graves has to give up the scuttle. No problem, default to Raptors, you know that blue quadrant will be safe from anyone else. But because he checked the wolves and has the timer, instead of resetting after doing his Raptors or perhaps heading to his Krugs, let's be honest, a beta move, he makes an alpha move as soon as the Hecarim shows top lane by helping unstick the top lane wave, which is now stacking in favor of the Lulu who had orchestrated this like Mozart. This means, oh, Hecarim's top lane and you've got a tier 2 level 4 wolf camp that are now belong to Canyon. And this is an extended sequence where you can break the backs of your enemy by basically tracking them so supremely that when they go back, when they sort of ignore certain parts of the map, you take it away. And you do this by staying out longer than you otherwise anticipate in order to maximize the map's bounty, to stay out for objectives, even as small as a crab, maybe a rotational gank, to counter jungle, but you must always pay attention to the language of the lanes in order to make it work. The lane states, do you have prior, who's out, who's backing, who hasn't, who has resources, who doesn't, why was Firefly cancelled? But after the wolves, he knows that he has 30 seconds between Hecarim going back to base on the top side and then hitting his Raptors. Unfortunately, the good wards by Rogue earlier means that Canyon was seen taking the wolf camp and is seen heading down to the bottom side of the map. Hecarim is of course heading to the red side to get the tier 2 Raptors and Krugs. These camps are of the utmost importance considering he already lost his second spawn of the wolves. Good pathing by Hecarim, a relatively risk-free attempt at stifling inspired even further by Canyon, and now finally Canyon can go back. Yeah, no, we don't want to do that. We're Graves, extended sequencing. We can stay out, we're not looking to PvP. We don't need extra stats in order to fight people. There's no need to have an extra long sword to battle the slapping cheeks of Gromp. I mean, it helps, but if you go back now and the lane states go against Damwon, Hecarim will have prior to take that whole blue side. And yes, they're all level 1, but that's still a juicy amount of experience. It's what a pony needs to become a stallion, so while Rogue's bot lane goes back to base, Pantheon can help in this XP domination by warding deep and forcing Expired to take long and safe pathings around his jungle in order to get around without risk. This buys time for Canyon to do his blue side, sets up further tracking, but it lays the foundation for Canyon to buy, head to his Raptors that are tier 2, his Krugs which are tier 1 and haven't been taken, and then his second red. Huge experience boost. Hecarim was able to reset after doing his Raptors and Krugs. Canyon saw this thanks to Pantheon as well as his own cheeky invade. So where else is Hecarim going to go at this point? Well, he must go back to base to topside to tier 2 Gromp, tier 3 Wolves, the third spawn thanks to Canyon resetting the camp, but now is forced to go to the bottom side where his second tier red will be spawning. Canyon, through this extended sequence, through this counter jungling, through this aggressive play and playing around these strong lanes, has forced Inspired to be in the opposite side to the objective priority. In this case, the Herald, and also happens to be in the opposite side of Canyon who has priority on stealing his blue. Hecarim also can't do Dragon because the lane states are in such a weird position, there's strong warding control, and essentially is really stifled, he can't do anything. This is where that level 1 severely hampered the possibility of Hecarim becoming remotely fed, and the excellent extended sequencing by Canyon gave him the ability to control the objective ping pong around his hard-winning lanes. And that is what you want to do in these kinds of situations, even in solo queue. I often get questions, what do we do when all our lanes are inting? Well, that's pretty easy, I've made a lot of videos about that, but what do you do when your lanes are winning? I struggle to sort of get a lead and then my laners get ganked by the jungler. You're seeing a great example of this. Now Canyon resets after Herald, takes his blue side again, second spawns, and knows that Hecarim was forced to path down from Gromp to Wolves to Red because of the early extended sequence. This means he pings out the Raptor spawn as soon as it's about to happen, and his mid lane and support can aid in the continuous jungling invasions. This once again forces a super long Hecarim pathing to be safe, not blind bushes, and again, same principle in solo queue. If you are behind this kind of pressure, you can't just walk into your Raptor pit thinking, I'm gonna take them, it doesn't matter, my lanes must rotate or die. Well, you're gonna die and then you're gonna lose. Walk the long way, put wards down, play as safe as you can. Now, Canyon is able to take the Raptors, then of course because of this prior take the Dragon, and now as you see he meets looking for another cheeky invade, 10 minutes, level 8 to level 6, 82 CS to 55 with 2 objectives to 0, all in the power of extended sequencing and advanced jungle tracking. Can you do these things with losing lanes? Unlikely, but then of course you've got to read and react to what the lane states are, and if they're pushing against you with this kind of pathing, you will simply have great ganking angles. However, if you prefer some more hardcore killing action, we will take a quick overview at this game, a similar game plan that happens with DRX vs Unicorns of Love, except Pyosik as Nidalee does her full red side instead of a red into blue invade. Evelynns are again concerned about invades as much as Hecarim's versus a Graves and Nidalee, and so instead of risking things, simply goes leashless on her blue. You can do that. Again, I mentioned that in the Hecarim example. And now can go buff Krugs for level 3 and then reverse clear up. This would mean that the Nidalee would do the red side and then end up on the blue side. And now as Evelynn, you're farming in the opposite direction of the Nidalee, sort of trying to avoid having any sort of PvP. This is a little bit weird to me because Evelynn in a 1v1 sense versus Nidalee in a vacuum, you're actually able to handle it quite well and can beat a 1v1 provided you are dodging spears. So Pyosik still tries to do similar things to Canyon having high pressure. There's a ward on the Evelyn's Raptors, goes straight there, knows they're up, smites them away from Evelynn, sticks around, and now pushes Evelynn out of her own jungle. Now the only reason for Evelynn to come back in is because they're anticipating a roam and a dive on the bottom side. The problem is you can't really go face checking into your jungle when Set is roaming as well. Vision equals tracking, but tracking only equals winning if you do something about it. Evelynn can now sort of go back to the top side. She's got a whole blue quadrant up, top crab. Nidalee can do the bottom crab, and because the Evelynn knows when Nidalee showed up at the Raptors, 12 CS, red camp, no blue, you can very easily extrapolate that Nidalee is doing her blue quadrant at the moment, and that she did red Krugs into Raptors. That means that around 4 minutes, Evelynn knows Krugs will spawn, but she makes the silver mistake of not pulling the Krugs towards her, which lets the minions driving by get some vision, and that's really not the exhibitionism that you're looking for. And now Pyosik can farm much faster than the Evelynn, does the blue camps, sees her top side, but instead of freaking out and saying let's defend the Raptor camp, finishes her wolves and knows that because Set is low and wants to back, can have the mid laner stick around in order to set up a prime time counter gank that nets Pyosik first blood. An excellent bait, lose the Raptors forward, but are now 3 camps and 1 kill up on the Evelynn, can go back to base directly to Dragon, take it, fall back to the blue side because the bottom lane isn't primed for a gank yet, so what do you do as a jungler to fill in that time? Do some farming. Honest work, pick up some golden experience, laners reconvene after a short itemization break, and then you go get another kill on the bottom lane. Translate that to timing the red buff spawn, counter jungle some more, take the red side, and for some reason Unicorns of Love awareness here is really tragic. Nidalee again shows up and gets another kill. Because of the 3 camp lead early, as well as the kill, it allowed Nidalee to basically force a vertical jungling setup where she can get dragon, camp bottom lane, get more fed, and basically all the Evelynn can do is counter jungle. And that kept going. Pyosik really took over this game. If you're looking for the solo queue equivalent, I will link a Nidalee challenger guide in the description. And while Pyosik didn't use the same sort of extended sequencing as Graves, was still able to use the same tracking and invading procedures to get huge leads and then translate that to map control. And very briefly, I want to give some notes about SofM as well as Selfmade. I don't have core breakdowns for you, but while watching them in the games and skimming through all the VODs, SofM is able to camp sequence extremely well even when you think it wouldn't be. Lee Sin vs Graves is a very good example. He did that against Yankos. You have excellent early pressure, you can 5 camp into crab very easily. You can absolutely rinse farm your camps. As the Lilia, this is even better because you scale and get such a huge lead given how fast you do it. The biggest thing about SofM, right, was the itemization. Playing to the win condition. Yes, it's absolutely great to sort of go full lethality and feel like a god, but in a grouped up fight against G2 and against other cohesive units or in solo queue great teams against you, you're just gonna get blown up and killed, which is why you see things like Knight's Vow, Spirit Visage, War Mugs, allowing him to go in, engage, soak damage, protect another carry who is actually going to be doing the damage, and then come away with a win. So as you're watching any jungler, not just SofM, make sure you're watching the itemization and how they play around their engage and team composition and not just to feel really good about themselves. Finally, I have made a video about Selfmade on the Mobalytics site talking about his playstyle and how you apply it to solo queue, but I really want to bring forth one thing that's so important is that he uses his mechanical prowess and great positioning to support his aggression. Couple that with his goal to, put Boris out of business by buying a Ghost Blade and having that upgraded by Ornn into a Wraith Blade, absolute savant level jungling, and basically because he knows his champion so well, the Evelynn comes to mind. I watched some other Evelynns in pro play and it really disgusted me. It was just so badly played. They didn't know how to sequence, use the mechanics, engage, or approach any sort of pick or fight potential. Selfmade knows his champion in and out and is basically just flashing and killing double doublelift over the wall in 0.2 seconds. When he's on Graves, because he knows he has the advantages that he's accrued through pathing, tracking, and perhaps some ganks and kills, he's able to continually apply pressure knowing that his mechanics will serve him well, and basically annihilate the other jungler from being able to play the game whatsoever. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that we will probably do a full VOD review or a full breakdown, just like the Canyon example, of a self-made game from week 2. Let me know if you're interested in that. I just wanted to note that knowing your champion mechanically and using that to actually apply aggressive procedures on the map is very fundamental to controlling the tempo and of course winning, which is what we all want to do. Well, there you have it, a nice breakdown of pro play and how to use sort of the advanced jungle things that go along with the solo queue fiestas, combine them, and you will be looking at a great climb at the end of the season. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment if you did. Consider please subscribing if you enjoy the content and want more, as well as heading to the Twitch page where we stream every week and the gameplay channel, which has, more content. I appreciate all the support, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.